Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. It is great to be in your earbuds. I hope you're doing well. Things over here are going smoothly. We have eased into our volleyball schedule and tournament play. And so my life for the next couple months is going to be volleyball, which, as my friend Alex tells me, just embrace it. So we have embraced the volleyball season over here in the Mustard household. But I got to say, super proud of our girls for the work they're putting in and the progress that they're making. So this week's episode is with Dr. Tammy Nelson, and you may have heard of her as she is a sex and relationship expert, international speaker, author, and licensed psychotherapist with almost 30 years of experience working with individuals and couples. In private practice, she focuses on helping people of all ages, orientations, and genders find love, healing, and passion. She is the director of the Integrative Sex Therapy Institute, teaches at several universities, and is a TEDx speaker. Plus, she hosts the popular podcast, The Trouble with Sex. And next month, from February 20th to 24th, she will be presenting clinical interventions for sex, intimacy, and relationship dilemmas in Cancun with leading edge seminars, innovations in psychotherapy. She's going to teach you the skills and interventions needed to help your clients out of the intimacy impasses that lead to low sex and sexless relationships. And you can learn more about innovations in Psychotherapy Cancun 2023 at the link in the show notes. Plus, there is still plenty of time to sign up for the February workshops. So be sure to head to the website to get all the details. And in this episode, Dr. Nelson shares how she became a sex and relationship expert, how you too can become a certified sex therapist, plus the number one question all couples therapists should be asking their clients. You can learn more about Dr. Tammy Nelson at drtammynelson.com, and we hope you enjoy this episode and find value. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Show. This week's guest is a special one, Dr. Tammy Nelson. Welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I haven't had a sex therapist on the show yet, so this is new and exciting. Not just for me, but I hope for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a sex therapist?
Sure. Well, I've been a therapist for about 35 years, which I know ages me, but I started off working with trauma and sexual abuse and dissociative disorders and eating disorders. And I worked with domestic violence and battered women. And I thought I was going to go to law school. I thought back then I was going to like save women from the courtroom. Like that was my vision. And I was going to make money.
Right.
And I thought, instead of being a social worker where I probably would never make money, I would both be an advocate for women and make money. And then I realized that I was also at the time doing a lot of artwork. I was a painter, and my mother told me, this was in my early 20s, my mother told me I would starve in a garret if I was an artist. And so I had this conflict of like wanting to help people and really, empowering women. My mother was a single mother and we grew up pretty poor, but I also was really creative but I didn't want to starve and I didn't want to be like my mother. So I worked as a paralegal for a while, and I was just about to take my LSATs, which are the exams you take to get into law school. And then I had this like epiphany where I realized like I was never going to be able to do my art. And I remember standing in my kitchen and I had a graduate catalog from a university, and I sort of looked up to the sky and I was like, all right, I don't know what to do. And I opened it. I like closed my eyes and I said, whatever I'm supposed to be doing in the world. And I opened it to any page, and it was a master's in art therapy. And I was like, oh my God, like that feels really, really right. Mm-hmm. So I got my master's in art therapy, and I learned a lot about like Jungian metaphor and all that stuff. And I love that. And I was still able to do my art. But then I was always really into relationships. And, I was one of those kids where all the kids in the neighborhood came over and I would like have little group therapy in my yard. And everyone would tell me their problems.
That's so funny.
I know. It's funny how like if you're a therapist from like birth, right? Right. It's in your blood. And or probably because I grew up in a dysfunctional family, I was trying to like cure myself. But I went on to do all kinds of like postgraduate certifications in couples therapy, also because I was in a marriage that wasn't going well. And I realized that I really wanted to figure out like how to have a healthy relationship. And I did all these certifications and trainings. I got my certification as an Imago relationship therapist and as a alcohol and drug counselor. And, I did these in-depth trainings in pretty much every kind of couples training you could get. And no one ever talked about sex, which I thought was like weird. And no one talked about sex in graduate school. No one talked about sex in these trainings that were supposed to be about couples. And that's why I started writing books and doing deeper investigation into what this thing was all about. And then I got my PhD in sexology. I'm a little obsessive about training. I think I'm still trying to tell my mother that I'm okay, even though she's dead.
Right. No, I hear you. I love your story. I mean, gosh, I think raise your hand if you can relate to, well, I can't see if you're raising your hand, but I think as therapists, we can all like, we're nodding our head. I did the group therapy. I like to call myself, I was like a detective. I was always trying to understand like what just happened there? Like something just happened. Did you guys see that? Like something just happened. Trying to understand the dynamics and relationships. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever did group therapy in the yard, but that's that's a great one. And I bet your mom would be so proud of you today if she was here. I bet she would. That's cool. You were able to combine everything, it all came together.
Yeah, I think we are destined in a way to finish off our parents' mission. Like I remember my mother told me when I was like 6 that every problem she ever had in her whole life was because of sex. And now I feel like my whole destiny is to teach people that sex doesn't have to be the problem, it could be the solution in their
Right.
life. Like you can focus on your companionship and being roommates, and that's not necessarily going to make you happy, but if you focus on your erotic life, your intimate life, your connection, that can help you put up with a lot of other stuff in your life and in your relationship. And so I think we're in many ways, which is kind of a Jungian thing, like we're destined to finish off the unfinished business of our childhood. And that may be why I do what I do. And I'm really committed to that mission in my life.
Right. So how do you fulfill that mission today?
Well, I see couples, primarily couples or thruples or more. Although I do see individuals as well. I have a private practice in LA, and I see most people online actually, unless they do intensives, which will come for a day or more. I also do retreats for couples, and I focus mostly on really in 2 areas. One, where people have been neglecting their sex life and they need to like reboot and figure out why they're not passionate anymore. Or the other side, which is sort of the trauma in their sex life, which is usually around affairs or some kind of infidelity, some kind of betrayal, or sort of what I call the monogamy gap, which is issues around their monogamy agreement, like how to open their relationship, or disagreements around what kind of monogamy that they want. So I've written 6 books. The most recent is Open Monogamy, which is a guide to co-creating your ideal relationship agreement. And I really believe in integrating sex and relationship therapy.
Okay. Do you see that more and more therapists are starting to do that these days?
I really believe that every therapist should have training in sex and relationship therapy. I'm shocked that we have let the field get to the place that it has without insisting that people get training in both sex and relationship therapy. I mean, when you're working with people, whether you're a couples therapist or an individual therapist, you're working with people who have relationships. That's what we talk about, right? Whether it's relationship with your with yourself, a partner, past or present or future, or your relationship with your job. I mean, we're talking about how we relate in the world. And I think we all need training and ongoing training in relationship therapy. So I have an institute, the Integrative Sex Therapy Institute, where I train couples and certify couples as sex therapists or sex and relationship therapists. And I really believe that the integration is important. Like, I think people need to learn how to talk about sex. Like, we need to ask our clients about sex. We need to let them know that this is a safe place to talk about sex, because where else can they do that?
Right. Yeah, those are great points. I mean, thinking back to my graduate education, I don't think we did anything on sex. And I'm a marriage and family therapist. Like,
Isn't that ironic?
yeah, now that I think about it, I don't know why I never really, but I guess because the work I've been doing for the past couple of years, it's just not my focus, like what I do, even though I am an LMFT. But yeah, if I was in private practice, for sure, I mean, I would want that. And I mean, gosh, and it almost feels like where I live, because I'm in South Carolina, and my peers or my colleagues, I know that the couples therapist, that's part of what they do, but there's not like this push to like talk about it amongst the peer, or in our meetings or in our networking. Maybe that's just something that sex is just kind of one of those topics. It's still taboo even within the therapist, communities. It's really wild. Yeah.
It's easy to me. I mean, we're not working with people who are just roommates. You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean? Like if we can't say, and I'll give you a takeaway. Like, if the only thing you take away from today as listeners is that you should ask every client, when was the last time you had sex and how was it? Like, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. You don't even have to be an expert in sex. You don't have to like know how to do sex therapy. You don't have to know how to handle sexual trauma. You just have to ask. And let it be a talk aboutable thing. And that just opens the door. You'll see your clients go, oh, like the relief of knowing that is a safe place to talk about, that you're a safe person to talk about things with, is incredible. If you don't know what to do with the information that they're giving you, then you can refer to somebody. You can say, I don't have that information, but I can find out for you. Or, most people have Googled their sexual dysfunction issue. They already know. They've Googled Dr. Google. They know how to work with premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction or orgasmic dysfunction. You don't have to be that for people. You just have to be the person that says, you know what, it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway, because I think for a lot of, especially new therapists, they're like, "Uh-oh, what do I have to do next if I'm not trained in this?" But then for the ones who've been doing this for a little bit, it's like, you just ask the question and pay attention to what happens when they give you the information and what the process is of how they talk about it and how they respond and react to having that conversation. I think that's so so wise. Thank you, for that great takeaway. Just like bumped up my confidence. So you do so much. Like, okay, so you have a lot of things going on. I know you have your institute. How do they get involved with your institute? What does that look like?
So, well, I have, a bunch of ways. Like, I have the retreats for therapists where you can get trained. Like, I have a retreat coming up in Cancun. And I know this podcast is probably evergreen, so you may miss it, but depending on when you listen, it's coming up February 2023. You can go away for like a week
Yeah,
and
in Cancun. So
train.
nice.
I know. I know. So you do the
Is
training in the morning, and in the afternoon you like can go to the beach or the pool or whatever.
Well, let's give a plug for Leading Edge seminars, because they've been really awesome, and we've done a little bit of work together. So you can go through them, and that's a week long, and it's in Cancun. And is that kind of like the entry into your program? Like, that's kind of like where you would start if you want to become
It's
certified?
certainly one entry. I mean, it's a great foundation for people that want to know, like, okay, I have clients who have these relationship dilemmas, whether it's around sex or affairs or open relationship, or I have a relationship dilemma, or I want to improve my own relationship. I mean, I'm not going to ask you what your questions are about. Are they about your relationship or your neighbor or a friend or your client? You can come and just learn how to deal with some of the more major issues, and also your relationship with yourself, like your self-care as a therapist. Like we're all in burnout right now. So there's a lot of trauma as a therapist, I think, just of coming out of the pandemic. So you'll focus a lot on that in the week that we're together. And also I'm going to do a free couples workshop in the evening. So if you want to come with a friend or a partner, or even if you come by yourself, we'll do some of the exercises together so that you at least have a, you know, a hands-on experience of how to do it in your session or how to tell people how to do it. And that's a good sort of primer for some of the work that I do. If you're more interested and you're like, oh, wow, this is really cool, and I would love to be certified, or I'd like to find out more, the Integrative Sex Therapy Institute, you could be certified as a sex therapist. ASECT is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. They give you the certification, but we offer all the courses and help you through it. Or we also offer a integrative sex and couples therapy certification. So you could be a certified sex and couples therapist through us.
Okay, cool.
And or you could just come and take a course. Like most of our courses right now are online again. And so you can take a course with any of our instructors, all of which are like at the top of the field of sex or couples therapy. And so if you're just interested in something like affairs or working with LGBTQ or like anything specific that you want to find out, or something more general, and then find out if there's more interest and you want to get a certification, or you want to get supervision or consulting, or there's many ways to do it. And you can come in at any level, and you can transfer in some of your CEs too. Like we'll work with you. But I think what's more important is I'm not trying to sell the program. What's more important is I'm really trying to sell you on, as a listener, on getting trained to do more work around sex and couples therapy. I think it's really important.
Are you thinking of starting a podcast this year? Or perhaps you're a seasoned podcaster and you're looking for someone to take the podcast production off your plate. If so, we are currently taking on new clients and would love to be your production partner of choice. My name is Chelsea Weaver, and I am the owner of Chelsea Weaver Podcasting. I offer podcast startup packages, audio and video editing, plus show notes, graphics, and reels. So consider us a one-stop shop for all your podcast needs. A little bit about me, I have over 5+ years of experience in audio and video production. I am an Army veteran who served in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. I partner with other female veterans who are also experienced in podcast production and social media services. We'd love to chat with you about your podcasting and social media needs, and can be reached at chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. That's CHELSEAWEAVER podcasting.com.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you more, and I mean, I agree with you for sure. I was just thinking, when you said you can transfer some courses in, so does your training kind of follow other couples counseling models out there, like Gottman or Sue Johnson? I mean, does it all work together, or do you have a preferred model that you would want people to kind of already know? Or
Well, the integrative part is, if you're going to be a certified sex and couples therapist, the training includes like a lot of courses in sex therapy, and then 30 CEs in couples therapy, and then 15 CEs in alternative therapy. So the 30 CEs in couples therapy you can take through us, or you can transfer in if you're like a Gottman therapist or a EFT therapist, or you've done training in like PACT or some other approved couples therapy model, Ellen Bader. Like there's like 6 people that we approve. If you've trained with them, Imago therapy, then we can take that into consideration and integrate that into your certification. The alternative courses are things that are like really contemporary treatment models. So things like EMDR, or even things like art therapy or narrative therapy, things that are really important, I think, for treatment providers today. And so there's options. Those are sort of like electives that you can take.
okay, so I'm definitely getting a sense for what the certification looks like. I think it's really neat. What a wonderful add-on to your practice if you're looking to maybe expand, or, you want to pivot a little bit and just really specialize, I think this is a great opportunity for that. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast? I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called The Trouble with Sex, and it really talks about like what are the issues in today's world around sexuality and intimacy. And I have, different experts that come on and talk about, a whole range of stuff. And, we have chats and talks about everything from like BDSM to sexual surrogacy to, sex addiction isn't real. Is it, like questions? It's sort of a challenge. And I answer listener questions, people calling in about open relationships or affairs or whatever sort of topical and on people's minds. There was recently something on social media that was just posted by Trevor Noah, mm-hmm. who is it's a great like 15-second recording of him talking about men and intimacy and saying, in our culture, men are so starved for intimacy and connection. And the only way that we approve of them getting that intimate connection is through sex. And so they've kind of been sort of taught that it's okay to want sex, but it's not okay to say, I love you to another man, or to say, I really need a hug, or to talk in a really intimate way about their feelings to another guy or to another woman without it turning sexual. And it was just so heartwarming and touching to hear a guy, especially a guy in the public media, talk in such an intimate way and self-disclosing way. And I'm like, oh, I want him on my podcast.
Right? Yeah. Who do we know that knows Trevor Noah? Let us know.
Oh yeah. Can anybody out there reach him? Tell him to call me.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. Reach out to Dr. Tammy Nelson and
but that's the idea, is to like challenge some of the stereotypes that we have, around the troubles with sex.
Yeah, no, I love this, and I love talking with other therapists and hearing these things and what your interests are and where you've been and what work you do. Cause I think I get so siloed in the work that I do that, like, oh yeah, there's all these other things going on out there that's fascinating and you're paying attention to and you're, asking these questions. So I encourage you guys to go and check out our podcast if you're curious to learn more or just, kind of see what is being discussed out there and maybe, would be discussed with your clients one day if you decide to go in that direction. So if somebody wanted to learn more about the Institute, do they just go to your website?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. You can go to my website, which is drtammynelson.com. So it's DRTAMMY Nelson.com. You could also go to my Amazon book page. There's a book, Integrative Sex and Couples Therapy, which has like 12 other authors in it. It's edited by me. I have like 5 chapters, but a lot of the instructors from the Institute have chapters in there. And you'll see all my 6 books there. And you can find the Institute through that. Or you can go to the Institute, which is Integrative Sex Therapy Institute.com or ISTItraining.com, ISTI training.com. So any of those places you can find information, or people can also email me directly. So it's Tammy@drtammynelson.com. And I'm happy to have my program director work with you to figure out, what's the easiest, fastest, most interesting way for you to get your education around these issues.
Okay. And I'll put all of that in the show notes, you guys. So if you didn't have a pen or you're driving, don't worry, just check back on the show notes and you can see all the different ways to connect with Dr. Tammy Nelson and the many different ways to access her programs and her books. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
If they want to email me and tell me that they heard this interview on your show, I can send them a free ebook. I have a couple books, Getting the Sex You Want and When You're the One Who Cheats, The New Monogamy. I have excerpts from the books, or I have handouts for couples, like worksheets, like 6 weeks to erotic recovery. So if they email me, I can send them a free ebook or an excerpt and just tell me that they heard me on your show.
Okay. Well, I'll put that in the show notes for everybody to figure out, how they can email you. And That's just great. Well, thank you for doing that for our listeners. I hope you guys take her up on that. That sounds awesome. That's so generous. So thank you.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's just been a pleasure to chat with you and getting to know you. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Looking to start 2023 off with knocking out some continuing education contact hours? If so, then be sure to check out my pod courses. Currently, there are 12 to choose from, and there are a variety of topics. Learn more about play therapy, addiction treatment, creating a self-care plan, meditation, and Ayurvedic life coaching, plus many more. But how does it work? So you'll listen to the content anytime, anywhere, and when you're ready, purchase the course, take the self-study quiz, pass it, and then download your certificate of completion. I think it's simple and easy, yet if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. And by the way, Mustard Consulting is a NBCC approved provider. So head over to my site to get your pod courses. Plus, you can still get your first one for free. However, just so you know, this free offer will be going away in the near future. So head to the site, sign up for a free pod course before it's too late. I'll then email you a code you can enter at checkout to get your first pod course at no charge. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.